Welcome all of you on board to this session today. This is a webinar which is having the title of Introduction to Marine Classes. Many of you are earlier participants with us, as I can see. Welcome on board once again. So just to introduce myself, my name is Radhika, and I've served in the general insurance industry for about 30 years plus in various roles and functions. And IRA Coaching is a training company which specially focuses on the insurance industry. And the nature of programs that we offer is on a variety of insurance topics, as well as on the business skills and the soft skills that are needed, especially focused on insurance professionals. This is the brief introduction. Some of our courses range from the free webinars like we do every Friday, 5 to 5:30. These are very, very short webinars for you to walk in and walk out to get the basic context and the scope and perhaps some of the basic concepts of a few products. And we also have the detailed webinars which happen during weekends. And also we have the detailed courses, which are 6 hours courses, which perhaps also will be very useful in case you want to gain more knowledge or even in terms of appearing for your certification courses, be it your licensure or association. So I welcome all of you once again on board. And for all our upcoming programs, you could visit our website www.iracoaching.com, or you can also find us on LinkedIn. If you put a search on IRA Coaching, you will find our page and you can follow the page to be updated about our programs. So right now we'll get started with marine insurance. So as we see the name itself, marine insurance, the context is basically, we know property is a fixed location policy, marine is point A to point B. So that much we all know, I'm hoping we all know that when we say property, it is fixed asset insurance, fixed in a particular location. And marine, when we say marine, it is more to do with the transit from point A to point B, right? So any goods in transit from point A to point B, anything that happens during the course of the transit is what we cover under marine insurance. Now, one of the basic contexts of marine insurance is, see, typically in a fire policy, you would see that it's a named peril policy. We say there are 12 perils in fire, and so we call it a named peril policy. In the case of marine, we use clauses. So today's webinar will focus on the word classes, right? So marine itself is very unique to classes because definition for the mode of transit or the very definition for the scope of cover, what type of losses are covered under the policy that's issued, will be clearly defined by the marine clauses that we attach to the document. So I want you to understand, when we say marine clauses, it mainly refers to what type of cover you want to give to your client, or what type of cover the client is proposing, right? So of course it is very simple in terms of saying ABC clauses. The pure comparison of coverages across the class A, B, and C is what we look at today. So very, very introductory webinar, but nevertheless, I am hoping it will be of some use to all of you. So I'll share a presentation. I hope you have the chat box in front of you. You can always type out any question that you may have on the chat box, and I'll try to answer the questions. So even before we get into the classes, I just want to ask some of you, this more like an icebreaker, where I would want you to get the context of marine insurance. Who can really take a marine insurance policy, right? Who are the stakeholders? So most of the times we misunderstand, that marine insurance means immediately we go behind the logistics people, right? The people who carry the goods from point A to point B. So we think that mostly marine insurance will be taken by those who are like the lorry owners or the carriers or the typically the logistics companies who go for marine. No, this is a fundamental understanding I want to start even before getting into classes. So for all of you on the webinar, one basic understanding about marine is the stakeholder or the person who can take the insurance policy is again the goods owner. Right? Very, very important. Now, the goods owner is somebody who has insurable interest and who can take the policy. So we should not mix this with whether a carrier can take a policy, a logistics company can take a marine policy. No. Now, at the same time, the goods owner, in many cases, largely when we talk about marine, we're talking about cargo, right? So you think of a factory, you think of a client who's manufacturing some product. Right now, what he does, quite possible, many of these industries or factories have their own vehicles to ship or move their goods from point A to point B. Even in this case, marine insurance does not apply. I want you to understand that the stakeholders of a marine insurance is who has insurable interest is the owner. That's very, very clear. But again, he has to hand over the goods to a third party carrier. He has to engage a logistics company or a transporter to shift his goods from point A to point B. If he's going to be typically using his own vehicles to, send out the cargo from, from, let's say, from his factory to go down or go down to the customer's place, then it does not fall within the ambit of marine insurance. So the stakeholders, clearly the first step is the owner, the second step is a third party carrier, but the policy will be issued to the owner. This is something I wanted to get. A subject matter, what do you cover? Right? So we already saw any type of cargo, any type of goods that are essentially being moved from one place to another become the subject matter of insurance. Marine cargo. Why we need marine? Very clear. Now, all the more after post pandemic, everything we want to operate and sitting at home, we want everything to come to our doorstep. E-commerce, logistics, or let's say any kind of transits that are happening right now, need for marine insurance is only picking big time, right? And of course, the need for marine insurance is beyond any doubt for all the factory owners and industrialists, because it's not enough they're going to cover their goods only within their factory. Definitely, they need to cover their goods when they keep moving either raw material into their factory or the goods that are finished, the finished goods from their factory to their customer place, or they may be exporting it, or they may be importing something. All transits, definitely there is a need to cover marine insurance. Sometimes also become compulsory because of the bank interest that is involved, and marine insurance has to be taken as a collateral security. So like I said, we will focus on classes today. It's a very, very introductory thing, but I wanted to get familiar with these words. Maybe many of you are already. So we say ICC ABC, ITC ABC, ICC Air ABC. These are the basic primary marine classes that we'll look at today. When we say ICC, what is the full form? Institute Cargo Classes. Now, these are standardized classes which are used across by all the insurance companies, and the wordings are standard, the coverages are standard. So anything that any insurer or underwriter wants to tweak or change, then they need to mention it through warranties and special classes. Right? So these are the standard set of primary classes, but nevertheless, there are special classes which underwriters use in case they want to tweak anything from the standard class. So ICCA, when you simply say ICCA, B or C, these are classes which are attached to define the terms, conditions, and coverages for sea voyages, right? So that means the cargo is moving by a vessel through sea, right? Overseas, but it is through sea, shipment, vessel, right? Now, when you say ITC, it is inland transit within the country. It is not outside the country, but it is within the country. And it can either, the modes of transit can be either rail, it can be either road by road, or it can also be through the internal waterways, like the rivers, the internal waters within the Indian land. Right? So here, when we say ITC, it's called Inland Transit Class. ICC was Institute Cargo Class. ITC is Inland Transit Class. Again, you have a combination of ABC. We look at what these three stand for. Now, ICC Air is very unique. because of the uniqueness of the air transport. So simply if you say ICC ABC, it is sea voyage. If you say ICC Air ABC, then it is air transport, air shipment, which means you could be sending your parcel through airway shipment. We generally use airway shipment for quick transfers, right? And also for a very highly valuable goods which you cannot afford to send by sea voyage. So right now, these are the primary classes, the names of the classes that we need to know, and they define the terms, conditions, coverages mainly, and the exclusions, right? So this is something that we need to know primarily. We will start with B, which is the midpoint, right? We have A on one side, C on one side, but we will focus on B. Why we want to focus on B? Because when you define and understand what are the coverages or what are the types of losses that get covered under ICC or ITC or ICCAR, whichever it is, we'll start with B. B for basic cover, right? So once you look at the basic cover, you get a hang of what are the coverages that are available. Defining C becomes very easy because if you remove a few from B, you will arrive at what are the coverages that are covered under C class. So when you say C, it is called restricted cover. B is basic cover, C is restricted cover. Now having seen B and C, then we will go to A. A is nothing but it covers all risks. A for all risks. So in an ICC A clause, you will never find what is covered. The coverage will simply say it covers all risks, but subject to a set of exclusions. So whatever is excluded is not covered. Everything else is covered. So you could imagine how A is a very, very comprehensive cover that is available to the client. I hope it makes sense. We will start with ICC B. So when we say ICC, we're talking about sea voyage, right? Now this particular ICC B covers is pertinent to sea voyage. Imagine, that let's say stock of aluminum rods, right, or stainless steel rods are being exported from India to Russia. Or you could have any number of examples. Let's say you're having import of automobiles from Indonesia to India. It can be export, it can be import. We already saw when you say ICC, it is outside the country, overseas. So it can either be import or export, right? It can be export of rice from, let's say, Chennai port to Australian port, right? Like this, it can be import of coal from Indonesia to India. Like this, it is from India or out to any place outside the country or from any other place to any of the Indian ports. So right now we're looking at overseas and by sea. Now ICC B, we said we'll start with B. What is this cover? See, one thing I want you to understand, when we talk about fire, we say we cover 12 perils. What is a peril? Cause of loss, right? There is an event which leads to a loss. Peril is a cause of loss. But generally, we don't refer to marine as perils. We say types of losses covered. I want you to understand these essential comparisons because this will help you to use the proper language when you communicate. So here we are only talking about loss or damage to the subject matter. So it is not like in fire also we mentioned loss or damage, but when you talk about a fire, you describe it as a named peril policy. But when you talk in marine, you're talking about what are the losses that get covered under the class. Basic cover, what does it cover? Let's see. Loss or damage to subject matter. Like I said, what is subject matter? In all the examples that I gave you, it could be stainless steel rods, it could be fabricated sheets, or it could be rice, it could be coal, whichever way, whatever is going in the ship, that is a subject matter, cargo. Any loss or damage that gets done to the subject matter due to any of these. These are the types of losses which get covered. We'll look at what are they. Fire or explosion. Imagine we're talking about a ship consignment. There can be a fire accident for a ship mid-sea also, or when it is on the port also. or when it is just navigating through its journey. At any point in time, there can be most common being, the fuel and the engine blast or anything like this can cause a fire accident. Explosion is again any kind of explosion that can happen to the vessel. So fire or explosion is the first basic type of loss. Then comes vessel or craft being stranded, grounded, sunk, or capsized. So very important to remember the sequence of losses. So one thing is, you randomly pick up this is covered, that is covered, but our focus, our idea of training, what we really focus on IRA coaching is to give you the sequence, tell you that this is how you present the coverage of class. This is how you need to understand it and also present it. We don't randomly put it across, right? So this is our essential goal, to see that people who come on our programs are able to get the sequence, the words, the language, and the terminologies. We look at the definition for each of these losses. Overturning or derailment of land conveyance. Now here it is land. We said it is sea. But whenever you have an import or export condition through sea voyage also, there will be either at the foreign country, there can be some land conveyance involved, bringing the goods to the port of shipment in the case of import, or even at the tail end. Let's say, a shipment has reached Chennai port. From port to the final destination, which is, let's say, the insurance warehouse, you must still have a land conveyance, right? Obviously, from the ship, it has to be shifted on to lorries or any other trucks and then carried to the final warehouse or place of destination. So there is a bit of land conveyance that will be involved with every overseas shipment. So any kind of loss that happens during that land conveyance by the vehicle either overturning, or if it's a rail transit that happens as the last leg, quite possible the rail goes off the track, right? That's also covered. Collision or contact of vessel, craft, or conveyance with any external object. So we're talking about the vessel. What is the vessel? The ship itself. When we say sea voyage, the ship is traveling with sea. It can come in contact, it can go into head-on collision with many things. We look at what all they are. But because of that, there can definitely be damage to the goods that are being carried. Very much covered. Discharge of cargo at a port of distress. These are very, very common when you talk about overseas shipments. There can be many political situations. There can be many natural act of God perils that occur, because of which, most of the time the ship has to stall or stop over at some port of distress. So if it is established for a genuine reason, and then the cargo also has to be discharged at a port of distress because it's getting too much delayed for the shipment to continue, very much covered as a loss under ICC B. Earthquake, volcanic eruption, lightning, all this is possible mid-sea, isn't it? So any of this that causes the ship to get damaged, and because of which the goods also to get damaged, are very much covered. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 losses in the first slide, and in the second slide we have 4 more, right? I wanted to remember ICC B means 10 types of losses are covered. Just get the number 10 registered on your mind. We already saw 6. Now the 7th one is what we call as general average sacrifice. Now I may not have too much time to explain in detail because this is an introductory seminar, but still I just want to throw some light on the uniqueness of marine losses, because it happens due to the exposure to maritime perils. Quite possible the ship is traveling mid-sea and there is a convulsion of nature or a heavy tide, or let's say, really a collision happened. Typically think of Titanic, right? Now, what happened to that ship? It hit an iceberg, and there was a situation where water was flowing in, right? Or even a minor turbulence can also create a situation where there is water inflow into the vessel. Now for the ship to run on a certain equilibrium and be afloat, there is a certain equilibrium that it needs to maintain. But because of a certain turbulence or because of some water getting into the ship or in whichever way, quite possible there is a situation. Please explain general once again. I'm still doing that, Anshu. I'm still on general average sacrifice. So all I'm saying is because of the convulsions of nature, because of any tide situation, huge waves, if there is a situation where the ship is losing equilibrium, it has to go afloat on water, right? But it is losing equilibrium and it is kind of gaining more weight, where if it continues, it might sink. So, in such an alarming situation, it is always the captain's call to sacrifice a certain portion of cargo into the water just to ensure the safety of the vessel. Suddenly, you have some more water or any other object that is getting loaded onto the ship. You need to sacrifice some cargo out. These situations happen very commonly. So, this is called a sacrifice. This is not a physical loss or damage to the goods. But the captain of the ship takes a call based on the situation just for the overall safety of the ship and the crew and all the goods. They may need to sacrifice those goods which are on, let's say, the most top layer cargo. Now, let's say there are 10 cargo holders who are putting their cargo into the ship, and let's say customer number seven's cargo is on the topmost layer, and his goods get sacrificed for the sake of overall safety of the ship because there is a natural condition. He needs to be compensated. So it is beyond him. It is because of a certain situation, a maritime situation. So this general average sacrifice, which happens mid-sea by the call of the captain of the ship, is also very much covered under ICCB. I hope that answers your question, or you can let me know in the Q&A or on the chat. So clearly, it's not a physical loss or damage, but it's a call that the captain takes as a matter of sacrifice for the overall safety of the vessel. Jettison or washing overboard is simply any partial loss. See, washing overboard means what? Again, like I said, there could be turbulence, right? There could be huge tides or waves, because of which the top layer of the cargo just gets washed away. It's very common. Most of the goods today are containerized. It used to be a very common type of loss, washing overboard. Simply, if you don't, package it properly, there's always the risk of goods getting washed away. Partial loss. Jettison is just a partial loss. Doesn't get washed away totally, but some part of the cargo gets washed away. And it's a maritime peril. It's very much a peril related to the high seas. So very much covered. But right now, one interesting fact about the way the cargo get packed is very, very interesting. Most of the times nowadays it is containerized cargo. Right? So some of you or most of you, if you're preparing for CII, you would know the CII syllabus is very, very extraordinary and very elaborate in that sense. It just not only covers the insurance aspect, but it covers the holistic ambit of the maritime trade itself. Even the associateship paper also has all these concepts added. So when you say container, these days the containers don't sink, they float. So there is a way you can retrieve the containers even though they get washed away from the vessel. Just as an academic interest, I want you to visualize how these losses can happen. Right? So any washing overboard is also very much covered under ICC B class. Then comes entry of sea, lake or river water into vessel. Now, like I said, there can be any number of causes that leads to water getting into the ship. Right? Can be an accidental hit against an object where the potholes open and the water leaks in, right? And it leaks into the place of storage, causing loss or damage to the subject matter. If it can be proved that it is not a negligent thing, but it is because of an unexpected impact with any object, then very much it is covered under the ICCB clause. And the last one, the 10th one, is total loss of any package lost overboard whilst doing loading or unloading. So typically these losses happen at the port premises or at the godowns where unloading and loading happens. The important point that you need to see what ICCB covers is total loss. So when you say that you typically a crane is lifting an entire container from the ship to the port premises, the entire container is lost into the sea, just dropped because of some malfunctioning. Then it is covered under ICCB. But let's say you have a situation where there is a partial loss. Let's say you have ceramic vases. Now these and because of some impact while loading and unloading, there is a physical damage, partial damage. That is not covered under ICCB, right? That gets covered under all risk because there's no such exclusion. But in B, I want you to focus on the key word, which is total loss of any package lost overboard or dropped whilst loading onto or unloading from vessel or craft. So we'll go through like a summary with some more pictures. But right now I wanted to remember and register the number 10. So these are the 4 pictures. Now the first one, stranded. Second one is capsized rather. The third one is Titanic, which is sunk, and also we have situation of grounded. We look at each of these definitions for you to get an idea. When we say a vessel is stranded, what does it mean? A vessel is stranding when the ship hits the seabed, like in this picture, it has hit the seabed and remains like that for a long period of time. It's a very, very common thing that happens. It is normally done to protect the ship, cargo, lives, or environment. Now, here's where we said this is not because of any accidental cause or damage. By voluntarily or for a certain purpose, the ship is being hit to the seabed or left and taken across to the seabed, normally done to protect the ship, cargo, lives, or environment. Like I said, there can be an alert of let's say a natural peril that's coming up. The ship is stranded at the seabed. Why? Because there is heavy turbulence in the water in the mid sea. This is a typical situation that happens, and because of which you've lost your cargo. Obviously, because you're not able to retrieve the ship or the cargo, very much covered under ICCB. Grounded is when the ship strikes the seabed. It's the same situation, but is normally associated with external or accidental reasons. Like, let's say motor, the engine failed or propulsion failed. Simply it is stuck and is taken to the seabed and it is stuck there, right? So stranded is where you do it purposely to save the items within the ship, but grounded is also hitting the seabed, but because of a lack of or some kind of accidental or external reason. Sinking is very easy to understand, right? Titanic is the biggest example. Simply the ship sinks. Can be because of, in the case of Titanic, we see it was also collision, which made the vessel sink into the water. It hit an iceberg and there was flow of water into the ship, and the ship lost its equilibrium and ultimately sunk. But sinking and submerging of the vessel into the sea is a very much covered loss. So capsize is when it loses its upright equilibrium. So every ship has an upright stability and an equilibrium based on which it runs, it stays afloat. But it loses, let's say, because of the weight propulsion, or quite possible again because of a certain turbulence, it loses its upright stability and finds a new equilibrium. It does not sink. Eventually it sinks, but most of the times it does not sink, and it's still, see in this picture, if you see, it has found a new equilibrium. It is tilted and found a new equilibrium. Most of the times they don't allow large ships, once they are capsized, they do try to retrieve and pull it up. But meanwhile, there could be loss or damage to the stock, which can be definitely covered under ICCB. The third was collision or contact. We saw this, right? Now, what all can a ship collide with? So we're talking about collision. If a road transit, you can easily imagine if it's a lorry, it can collide with another lorry, or let's say with the overbridge, or with a road divider, or even to, let's say, a private property. Any kind of collision can happen, causing damage. But in the case of ship, what can it collide into? That's a question. It can collide into another ship, like what is seen It can collide with an iceberg, which is what happened in the case of Titanic. It can collide with any construction equipment or bridges that are constructed across the sea route, and it can also collide with the docks because it cannot find the natural ability to anchor itself. It just runs into the docks, right? This is also collision. The vessel gets damaged and the cargo inside also get damaged. This is again another structure that is built across the sea. It's a railway track, and there's almost a collision that happened with the ship and the train that was passing by. Can also collide with sea animals. Look at this. Now, Vancouver was a vessel name, and this vessel apparently struck a 70-ton fin whale, right? Whale. So, like, sea animals are huge, bulky. If the vessel hits a sea animal, it's a huge collision, right? So that can cause damage, and that is also very much covered under a ICC B clause. In this case, this example, like thousands were evacuated as recent as January 2012. A cruise ship almost went and hit against the dock. Collision on the dock. So what about this? We saw collision with water. Now, when you see that the fourth laws, it says other than collision with water. If you see in this picture, this is a very, very common kind of loss. Collision happens with water because of, again, the turbulence and other aspects. Now, collision of water simply in the normal course of the journey is not covered in ICCB, but quite possible in this picture you're seeing that it is because of a maritime peril, because of a convulsion of nature, a heavy storm or a rain, right, which has in turn made the collision with the water. The force of the water, the entire damage goods can get damaged. With the sheer speed of water itself, it can clearly damage the goods. So collision with water provided happening because of a convulsion or a basic natural peril or a maritime peril is very much covered under ICCB. So I wanted to understand, I'm giving you an overview of the coverages, but it's really, marine is one subject which is an endless learning, right? It's an endless learning, and every situation is unique. It brings out so many new aspects which have to be looked at independently, but nevertheless we are looking at the standard terms. So like we saw, collision with water is covered if there is a loss before that in terms of a storm or cyclone. The 10th one, I wanted to visualize through this picture that typically in the port there is a crane which is lifting and dropping, loading and unloading is happening, and there is a total loss of a package into the water which is unable to be retrieved, right? This is exactly what is covered as a loss under ICC B. So now, right now, having seen ICC B, I told you there are 10. It is now very, very easy to jump into ICC C. What is covered? How is it different? When we say C, it is restricted cover. When we say B, it is basic cover. So C restricted cover is nothing but out of the 10, you remove these three. Earthquake, volcanic eruption, lightning is removed. Entry of sea, water, lake, river water is removed, and total loss during loading and unloading is also removed. If you remove these three coverages, whatever is left, the remaining 7 are covered under ICC C. So this way it's easy for you to compare and learn the coverages. So right now we have this slide and one more to go. Now when you ultimately see what is the comparison, like ICCA, like we already saw, it covers everything except exclusions. ICCB covers 10 types of losses, right? When we say all risk, obviously it covers much wider than B. B, we know, we already saw it covers 10 types of losses. So what are the common losses which get covered under all risks is what I've tried to enlist here, because this is more like a comparison slide. Theft, pilferage, non-delivery, misdelivery, these are all keywords, right? Accidental damage other than dropping, right? Only dropping we saw accidental damage covered in B. Malicious damage, rainwater damage, right? And hook, mud, oil, acid, these are all very, very commonly associated losses that occur but not covered under B, but these are valuable coverages that a client will look under A. So A does not cover only this. It covers everything other than exclusions, but I have given you a list of those common losses in addition to the 10 that is covered under B, which get covered under A. So this will give you an understanding. This, because it's a comparative slide, you will know the widest will cover 10 plus these, which are very common, and some more also. See, all risk is something that covers everything other than exclusions. But still, I wanted to give you some examples of what generally, see, theft and pilferage are very, very common loss. But the underwriters and insurance companies, they will never give all risks very easily. They will look at what type of cargo, they will look at how much exposure, how much premium we can charge, what is the excess we can impose. If they don't find a favorable situation, they will restrict the cover to B. Because theft, pilferage, these are all highly, loss-making coverages. Now, ICCC, we already saw that we have to remove those three perils, losses. I just thought it would give you some overview. Now, this is another comparative slide. Again, you could see what all are yes and C. You could take a picture of this in case you want. What all are yes in B. And of course, in A, everything is a yes because it is all risk. So just to give you an overview and a comparison of what are covered under all the three set of classes. And these, the same coverages would apply even to the air classes, mostly. To summarize ITC, so similar thing. Again, C is restricted cover, B is basic cover, A is all risk cover. Now I wanted to take a picture of this. Now when you talk about the perils or losses that get covered under the inland transit, obviously the nature of losses are something slightly different. You could look at the list. Fire, lightning, breakage of bridges, because of which the goods get damaged, is covered. Collision is covered. Overturning, we already saw even in sea voyage for the land transit, is very much covered under inland transit. Derailment is covered in case if it's a rail transit. Any other loss other than exclusions are covered. So primarily, I want to leave you with this much understanding in this webinar, that we are looking at how ABC are comparable and how it is different based on the mode of transit, and how the class gets attached to every document based on the terms, conditions, and coverages that the client chooses for their shipment. So this is just the fundamental learning I wanted to bring out in this session today. So we look at that in the next edition perhaps. But in case you want to learn all of it, in one shot, then you could also apply for the course that we have. So the marine insurance course, like I said, it's also scheduled, I think, in this month. You can look at the website or make a call on our WhatsApp number. And it's a 6-hour course where you'll get a detailed understanding and continuous learning of the entire subject. So when we do the 6-hour courses for any subject, we generally cover what gets covered either in an association syllabus or on the CIA syllabus. Make use of the 6 hours course, you will be able to attend the competitive exams and be very useful. This is what we have right now in this particular session. So thank you so much for joining. Nice to see many newcomers. Keep coming, spread the word, let your friends know if you think they can make use of these sessions as well. So thank you so much for joining. I'd like to close here. We'll see you soon in the next.